Welcome! In this series of videos, we will look at software add-ons for both the PowerBasic console and Windows compilers. Today we will look at enhancing our CGI application on the Abyss web server by using asynchronous JavaScript and XML to call a second CGI application to populate data on our web page without reloading. This was our application at the end of the last video. Our application displayed a web page, and on that web page there was a drop-down list to allow us to select one of two reports. Depending on the report selected, when the Get a Report button was then clicked, the form would then be sent back to the application and it would display the report on the page. What we're going to do in today's video is we're going to add a new button to allow us to display the report on the same page as our form. This is using a technique known as AJAX, which is asynchronous, JavaScript and XML. It sounds quite complex, but we'll go through this one stage at a time and you will find it quite straightforward. How our application actually works is via a PowerBasic console application, in this case CGI Demo 4. When CGI Demo 4 is launched with no parameters, it will look inside the Page Templates folder. The Page Templates folder at the moment has two page templates. The index page. This template is used to provide a rough template for our web page, and the application itself populates this data tag with whatever is necessary. We're going to add a new template to this folder called User List Report. We'll come back to that when we look at our code. So here is our CGI application, which we're now calling Demo 5. For clarity, I've commented out all the functions that are not actually in use within the application, just to leave the ones which we are using. In our PB main function, its first task is to read in to see if there are any parameters. If there are no parameters, it will call this function, createIndexPage. The createIndexPage uses this page template, index.txt. We're going to change that today, and we're going to change it to userlistreport.txt, the template we copied in a moment ago. And the rest of this function is untouched. The other thing we want to do on our web page is we want to display a new button. We'll keep the existing button to display the report on a separate page, but we're going to create a new button whose task in life will be to display the report on the same page as we are now. So to get this to work, we need to change the Getpages function. The Getpages function is the bit that populates the data tag. It embeds a form inside the HTML page, and in the form is a select drop-down box and the input button. And we will just change the text on that button to make it clear what the button does. This is a button that's going to get a report on a new page. So our new piece of code here is going to add an additional button. The input type is button. We're giving it an ID of getReport, and the value that appears on the button will be display report on this page. Additionally, this button has an onClick event, shown here. The onClick event will call a JavaScript function on the web page. This is one of the features of JavaScript. You can have onClick events on a number of objects, and these can be used to call other JavaScript functions. In this case, we're calling display report. Now, if we have a look at the user list report, this is our template. In our template, we have added one or two new things, which I will now go over. At the top, we've added a script type to say that there are going to be embedded JavaScript functions within this web page. The display report function, which we're calling when the user clicks on the new button, is the one that's going to be doing most of the work. We want this display report function to pick up the value the user has picked in the drop-down list. In our drop-down list, which is our select button, we currently have a name for it, We're also going to add in an extra line of code here to give an ID for the drop-down list. In this case, we're going to call it rep1. And in our JavaScript, we are picking up the value attributed to the rep1, which the user has picked from the drop-down list. And we're getting the value of that and storing it in this chosen value variable. Now comes the AJAX. We've created a common function called load dynamic request, which I'll cover in a moment. This load dynamic request, when called, is going to call a brand new CGI application which we have yet to write. We're calling this one demo report, and we're passing two named parameters to it, a t parameter and a report parameter. The report parameter is what the user has picked from the drop-down list. The t parameter is basically a random number to ensure that our web server does not cache the web page. So each time this is called, it will appear to be calling a different page with different parameters. And the return from our load dynamic request is going to be used, should it be successful, to populate a division tag in our web page. And we've given this division tag the name of report result. And anything we get back from a new application, this response text, will be put within that HTML tag. As this AJAX technique has been around for quite some time, there is code in here that will be used to support versions of Internet Explorer all the way back to IE5. This code is probably fairly useless now, as most users have moved way beyond IE6. But this piece of code here is the one that does the work. This will launch the message off to our web server and attempt to get the information coming back. It will pass it back to the display report function, which will display what comes back inside this division tag. If we have a look at the user list report template, we'll find this is our division tag. This highlights the area on the web page that we're going to be populating. Now, when the application initially runs, this will be completely empty. But once the user has clicked on our new button, it will then launch the new application, which will return information to place within that division tag. That's quite a lot to take in, so let's recompile our program and step through this one stage at a time. So we will copy our demo5 program into the CGI bin. Now, we've not written the new program yet, but we've done enough to display the button on the screen. So let's go to our new application. So there's a new application. We've relabeled the original button, Get Report New Page, and we've got a new display report on this page. And we can still use the original functionality to display either report on a separate page. But now we need to create the application that clicking on this button will actually call. So this will be our new application, Demo Report. This will use the same libraries as our other CGI application, the Windows 32, the PBCGI, and our file handling routines. It's going to be very similar to our first CGI application. We're going to set up some local parameters, and we're going to read from the standard input. So before we go any further with this application, let's just create it as a skeleton. All the application is going to do is to return the word here. So if we compile that, and we copy this new application onto our web server, there's our demo report. We'll copy that one in. So if we click on the new button now, it will return the word here. So it has successfully populated the division section on our web page. And we're still on the original page, so we can still click on the original buttons and click on the new button quite happily. All we need to do now is to display the original report inside this division section. So let's go back to the code. So in our PB main function of the new demo report application, we need to do what we did before. We need to count and parse the parameters into an array. And if there are no parameters, we want to give a message back to say there is no data. and then we're going to be using a for next loop to go through each of our parameters. For our first parameter, we can ignore this one, because this is merely a construct to allow the system to avoid caching. So we're going to ignore the first parameter, and we're going to concentrate on the second parameter. The second parameter in this case is our report name. Now this is a named parameter, so we'll start with report equals and then the name of the report. So the first thing we're doing is we're decoding the CGI string to pull out the second parameter. And then since we know that is a named parameter, we're going to use a parse command to parse it on the equals. This will give str file equal to the name of the report we're actually looking for. So to ensure we're getting the right information coming in, let's just send the name of the report file back to the web page. So if we recompile our report application, so we click on our new display report button, this will execute our demo report on the server, and it should display the file name associated with no balances, which is myfile.csv. If we select the one with balances, we should get a different file, myfile2. So our selection appears to be getting passed correctly to the other CGI application, which is going to generate our report. So now that we know the file that we need to report on, we merely have to replicate a new function within this report application to do what the other application was already doing. And that function is getUserList v3. It takes a single parameter, which is the name of the file to load and display, and it will then build up the HTML that's going to appear. So we merely have to take the name of this function and use strFile as a parameter. So let's compile that, go back and copy it onto the web server. And if we go back to our web page is our demo5.exe. If we click on our display report on this page now, it will successfully display our HTML formatted table. If we select the other file, the no balances file, click on the button and it displays the account number report. So what we've achieved today is we have amended our original web page to allow the user to click on a button on that web page and display additional information, in this case a report, on the same web page, without wiping out any of the selected information on the web page itself. Since this is done within a form, this allows you to customize your form in a way where some of the parts of the form can be quite interactive. For example, the selection from one drop-down can display another drop-down which was not originally visible. So this can give you a quite interactive web page which the user can navigate around by clicking on different elements within the page, each of which is actually backed up by a PowerBasic application. However, we'll explore more of that in the next video. But that's it for today. Thank you for watching.